At 16, Moise Kean was breaking records at Juventus. By 19, he was scoring for Italy and staring down racist crowds with pure defiance. But now, he's a striker who can look unstoppable one week and completely disappear the next. So what happened to Italy's next big thing? This is the player who was supposed to dominate Serie A for a decade, who's played for Juventus, Everton, PSG, and now Fiorentina. He's had goals, glory, and moments that made headlines around the world. But also transfers, benchings, and managers who stopped trusting him. Today, we're unpacking the brutal truth about Moise Kean's career, and why it's a story of talent, mistakes, and the fight to prove everyone wrong before time runs out. At just 16 years and 265 days, Kean became Juventus' youngest ever debutant in a Serie A match against Pescara in November 2016. That alone was historic, but it also made him the first player born in the 2000s to appear in any of Europe's top 5 leagues. And in case anyone thought that was a one-off, only a few days later, he was making his Champions League debut against Sevilla, setting another record as the first 2000s-born player to feature in the competition. On May 27, 2017, Kean took things further when he found the back of the net in a game against Bologna, becoming the first player born in the 21st century to score in Europe's major leagues. These moments were more than just trivia. They were building blocks of a growing legend. I mean, this was the same guy from his youth days with Juventus U19 in the 2015-16, scored 24 goals in 25 games. But despite that explosive debut, Kean's role at Juventus never really took off. In his first senior season, he made just 3 substitute appearances, totaling 44 minutes. For all the hype, he was still a teenager mostly watching from the bench. A loan to Verona gave him more chances. But when he returned to Turin, the picture hadn't changed much. Juventus' attack in 2018 and 19 was stacked with Cristiano Ronaldo, Paulo Dybala, and Mario Mandzukic. Kean's minutes were scattered across the season, and yet in only 536 Serie A minutes, he scored 6 goals, meaning he registered a goal every 89 minutes. Those numbers screamed that he was ready for more. But football doesn't always work like that. As the new season approached, Kean was back from loan with expectations on his shoulders. But he was about to learn that getting into a superstar-filled Juventus side was only the first challenge. If Moise Kean thought he was about to walk into the next season as a regular at Juventus, he was in for a rude awakening. In the 2018-2019 season, he only played 17 games, and even that number looks better than it really was. There was a point in March 2019 when Massimiliano Allegri left him out of the starting lineup against Empoli. This was at a time when other forwards were injured, so it wasn't about squad depth. That left people wondering if it was about tactics or maybe something disciplinary. Whatever it was, the message was clear. Then came the night in Cagliari, and this was the kind of night that stays with you forever. Kean, still just a teenager, was getting racially abused by the crowd. Most players would have gone quiet, but he didn't. He scored, walked straight into the stands, and stood there with his arms wide open like he was telling them, "Say it to my face." It was pure defiance. But instead of everyone rallying around him, his own teammate Leonardo Bonucci made that now infamous 50-50 comment, basically blaming Kean for provoking them. Imagine that. You're dealing with abuse from the crowd, and then you get thrown under the bus by your own teammate. The pressure on him was crazy. Kean responded the only way he knew how, by scoring. In the next match against AC Milan, he came off the bench and scored the winner. That one put Juventus just one step away from the league title. A week later against Spal, he scored again. That was 6 games in a row for club and country. For a striker, that's amazing. And for a teenager, it's even more impressive. But here's the problem. No matter how many goals he scored, it still wasn't enough to convince the people at Juventus that he was the future. The air around him started to feel heavy. And when you can't breathe, you start looking for somewhere else to run. That somewhere else turned out to be the Premier League. And how did a young Moise Kean find England? Let's refresh your mind. You know when you buy something online, and the pictures make it look like the greatest thing ever, but when it arrives? Yeah, that was Everton with Moise Kean. In August 2019, they signed him from Juventus for £27.5 million. On paper, it looked like a masterstroke. Here was one of Europe's hottest young strikers walking into a club still haunted by the ghost of Romelu Lukaku. Preseason had been rough too, only 3 goals in 7 matches, so Kean was meant to be the fresh spark they desperately needed. Except the spark barely lit. By the time his Everton stint was over, he had scored just 4 goals in 37 appearances. And here's the wild part. Before Marco Silva got stacked in December 2019, Kean had started only twice in the Premier League. Twice. For a striker you just dropped nearly £30 million on. Part of the problem, they didn't even play him where he was meant to play. Silva stuck him on the wing, and the low point came when he got subbed at halftime against Watford after running around out of position all game. If that wasn't bad enough, under interim boss Duncan Ferguson, he was brought on against Manchester United, and then hooked off just 18 minutes later. Ferguson said it was because they needed fresh legs, but everybody knew it felt like a public slap in the face. And then there was everything happening off the pitch. Ken was late to team meetings more than once, which eventually got him dropped from a match against Southampton. The cultural adjustment was another battle. He once said that in England he saw people barbecuing on the beach in winter and thought, these people are out of their minds. Add in the chaos of 3 managers in 1 year, Silva, Ferguson, and then Carlo Ancelotti, and the instability was complete. Even with an Italian in charge, Ken could barely get a look in, with Ancelotti preferring the likes of James Rodriguez. By October 2020, the club had given up on trying to make it work. Ken was shipped out on loan to PSG, and his time at Everton ended not with a bang, but with a shrug. But here's the thing. If you thought the Everton story was messy, wait till you hear what happened when he landed in Paris. Because for a moment, it looked like the old Ken was back. And then it took another twist. When PSG took Moise Kean on loan in October 2020, it felt like one of those rebound relationships. You're not really looking for the one, but you need someone right now. Mauro Icardi was injured, and PSG needed an extra body up front. On the surface, Ken delivered. 17 goals in 41 games, 3 of them in the Champions League and a goal every 108 minutes. With Neymar and Mbappe supplying him, life felt easy. But when you looked closer, most of his goals came against League One's bottom half. And when the big Champions League knockout nights arrived, he went quiet. He wasn't really involved in the build-up either, averaging less than 1 key pass per game. He was a penalty box striker through and through. Great if you fed him, limited if you didn't. PSG saw it too, and when the chance came to bring in Lionel Messi, Ken's £35 million buy option was left sitting in the drawer. So he went back to Everton. But by then, Everton had already moved on. They immediately shipped him out on a 2-year loan to Juventus, almost like they couldn't wait to get him off the books. Juventus wasn't the fairy tale return either. Ken had flashes, but it never really clicked the way it was supposed to. And then came Fiorentina, where suddenly it all made sense again. In his debut season, he was unstoppable, ending the year as their top scorer with 19 goals. That was good enough for second place in the Serie A scoring charts, a massive statement for a player many thought had already peaked too early. It felt like Ken had finally found a home, but that's where the real question kicks in. After the ups, the downs, the false dawns, and the flashes of brilliance, what's the honest truth about Moise Kean's career at this point? Is he finally the star he was meant to be? Or is this just another chapter before history repeats itself? Hit that like and subscribe button, not because it's the YouTube thing to do, but because the next part of Ken's career isn't just about football anymore. It's about what happens when talent meets time, and time starts winning. If you strip away the hype, the headlines, and the next big thing labels, the truth about Moise Kean's career is simple. His biggest opponent has never been a defender. It's been himself. Something that took him from being one of Italy's brightest young strikers to a player struggling even to convince his managers to trust him. And it didn't happen overnight. It's been building for years, piece by piece. It starts with the little things that most fans don't see. The mental side, the technical side, and the situations around him that never seem to align. But out of all these factors, one stood out the most. His maturity. Now you might be thinking, is that really enough to hold a player back? In Ken's case, yes. Just ask Carlo Ancelotti. Back in 2020, the Everton boss left him out of matchday squads more than once. The reason? Chronic lateness. No injury, no tactics, just not turning up on time. And then there was the infamous substitution Duncan Ferguson made when he subbed Ken off after only 18 minutes. He wasn't hurt, he wasn't limping. It was about effort, or the lack of it. The problem is, when a player starts building that kind of reputation, it follows them everywhere. Managers talk, scouts remember. By the time Ken went back to Juventus under Allegri or worked with Vincenzo Italiano at Fiorentina, the trust just wasn't there. And without trust, you're not getting those regular 70 to 80 minutes every week that a striker needs to grow. Without that rhythm, every game feels like you're starting from zero. But the story doesn't stop at discipline and trust. Because even if Moise Kean had perfect professionalism, there's another problem that's slowly eating away at his game. Technical stagnation. Think about it. Most young players burst onto the scene raw, then sharpen their tools year by year. Ken, his numbers tell a different story. Since his teenage breakout, the needle has barely moved, and in some areas, it's moved backwards. Passing accuracy has gone from 68% in 2018-19 to 67% in 2023-24. Aerial duels down from 41% to 38%. Those are among the lowest for forwards in Serie A. And then there's the decision-making. At PSG, he was caught offside less than once a game. Back at Juventus, that's up to 1.3 times per 90. For a striker already struggling to get chances, those small margins matter. The physical side of his game, which was also once his trademark, has also taken a hit. After muscle injuries in 2021, his acceleration just hasn't looked the same. Successful dribbles have dropped from almost 2 per match to less than 1. That extra burst, that thing that used to separate him from defenders, seems to be fading. And here's where it gets worse. His career hasn't just been shaped by what he did on the pitch. Off it, there's been mismanagement that amplified these flaws. Everton played him out of position. PSG's loan spell looked great in the headlines, but masked the gaps in his fundamentals. And Juventus? They treated him like a budget bench option in a system that didn't play to his strengths at all. Those transfers were built on market perception. Early goals at Juve and PSG creating the illusion of progress, while the underlying stats told a different truth. But here's the twist. Despite the setbacks, Moise Kean is starting to write a new chapter at Fiorentina. Last season, he found a system that actually suits him, giving him the minutes and freedom he's long needed. He's scored 19 goals and provided 3 assists in 32 Serie A appearances, averaging nearly a goal every other game. His shooting accuracy has climbed, and he's more involved in build-up play, linking well with teammates and showing flashes of the player everyone once dreamed he could be. It's not perfect, and past mistakes still linger. Discipline, consistency, and decision-making remain challenges. But Fiorentina's faith in him and the environment they've provided could finally be the catalyst he needs. If Kean can maintain this form and keep learning from the past, maybe, just maybe, he'll prove that the brutal truth of his career isn't the whole story. And now here's the big question. Was this all bad luck and poor guidance, or did Kean's game simply stop evolving because he thought talent alone would carry him? The answer might decide whether we ever see him fulfill that early promise. And finally, we've come to an end to the Moise Kean story. Thanks for sticking with me and watching all the way through. If you enjoyed this breakdown, go ahead and smash that like button and subscribe to the channel. And hey, don't go just yet. Stick around and click on the next video because we've got more deep dives, wild football stories, and insider breakdowns coming your way. Trust me, the twists in football never stop, and you definitely don't want to miss what's coming next.